Hello, everybody. I'm feeling pretty scholarly today. I've been examining some papers through my work, some literature, some articles that have been very enlightening and very helpful to create more nuance, both in my perspective and also to shed light on what I was already intuiting, but I actually had not done enough research on. So, you know that this channel focuses on um, a continued questioning of the role of technology as it pertains to our shared human future. And that many here that are listening are probably already skeptics in terms of technology. But oftentimes, I think people are quick to make assumptions or jump to conclusions about the positions that this skepticism entails. And indeed, it can be very diverse what this skepticism is about. So I encountered this amazing paper through my paid job on neo-Luddites or neo-Luddism. So all of you have heard the word Luddite, and it's a pejorative. It's used to say, oh, you're such a Luddite. It just means like, oh, you're not up to speed with this technology. You don't know how to use the features on this phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this is acquiring a new meaning today when we're having discussions on the role of technology and what it's doing to society and our relationships. And so some academics have put together a really good paper. It came out in 2025. And I will do highlights and summarize what the findings are, but I've also drawn on other articles in The Guardian and other newspapers. So I will include all of these links below. But the gist of it is the following. I think the overarching framework ideologically that we're dealing with in society today, but not only today, is one of techno-optimism. So what is techno-optimism? I think we all know what that sounds like. It basically is an ideological framework that remains entrenched in a utilitarian paradigm that is equating technology with progress, efficiency, and growth. And anyone that is going to question that is sometimes maligned, ridiculed, put to the test, if you will, to say the least. But everywhere we look in politics and economics and other types of discourse, this is the point of view that's being promulgated. It's a form of techno-optimism. Now, those who are on the questioning side of it, we can label them as the opposing camp, which is techno-pessimism, but I don't think that really captures the gamut of dissent within this group, because techno-pessimists are usually for full rejection of technology, or they're also known as doomsday, naysayers and people that are predicting the end of humanity because of AI going rogue. And we know a lot of people have actually come on social media and started sharing about the existential dangers that AI may be positing for humanity. And we have plenty of examples to engage with that perspective. But yes, it is the opposing perspective to techno-optimism. Instead, there are different forms of techno-skepticism that can sort of be in between that spectrum of positivism or pessimism. And Luddism is falling in that margin. And so first of all, who are the Luddites? You know that the Luddites were in the early 1800s in England opposing the mechanization in the textile industry, and some of them were doing it through direct rebellion, smashing of industrial looms. And they were craftsmen, and they were quite evolved in their extended communities. So, they were basically concerned with the loss of their rights as workers. They weren't just concerned with the technology or the innovation aspects of the technology. And of course, this movement was defeated But it's sort of like there's signs that it's having a resurgence in the world today. A new modern version of Luddism. I mean, remember when people were smashing cell towers when 5G was being rolled out? Remember when we had Google workers form opposition and protests to some of the AI technology that was going to be used for military drones? And how about people that are just opting out of certain apps and AI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So I will just read a few quotes on what it means to different people that are self-identifying as Luddites or neo-Luddites, and hopefully that will be inspiring for you. Okay, this is what this one person says, and these people are referenced in the article, so you will see them. Luddism is about the idea that just because technology exists, it doesn't mean that it gets to sit around unquestioned. Just because we've rolled out some tech doesn't mean we've rolled out some advancement. We should be continually skeptical, especially when technology is being applied in workspaces and elsewhere to order social life. And so this artist, her name is Crabapple, and she said, for me, Luddite is someone who looks at technology critically and rejects aspects of it that are meant to disempower, de-skill, and impoverish them. Technology is not something that's introduced by some God in heaven who has our best interests at heart. Technological development is shaped by money, shaped by power, and it's generally targeted towards the interests of those in power as opposed to the interests of those without it. The stereotypical definition of a Luddite as some stupid worker who smashes machines because they're dumb, that was concocted by the bosses. So yeah, here's some questioning of the pejorative aspects of Luddite. Basically also like Luddism, to just to give it a different definition, is founded on the politics of refusal, which in reality just means having the right and the ability to say no to things that directly impact one's life. So now in our day and age, what would be digital Luddism? Digital Luddism doesn't reject all technology, but it challenges the systemic injustices in digital infrastructures. I will add that it's not just about fairness and the social justice movement, but okay, I'll go with that definition. Unlike the original Luddites who could dismantle physical machinery, contemporary resistance faces global, intangible digital systems that permeate industries and evade containment within any single organization. Okay, so fair enough. I will go with that definition. And I will also differentiate this digital Luddism from digital minimalism, which is when a person simply chooses to withdraw. For example, someone's going to quit social media. They just can't handle this anymore. They think it's detrimental to human mental health and many, many other reasons they may have, and they decide to quit that. That is digital minimalism. So they're either in complete rejection of the technology or they're minimizing technology in their lives, which is different than digital Luddites. So what are essentially some examples of protest or opposition? Okay, so there was a well-documented example, 2018, where Google employees protested against Project Maven, which is a Pentagon initiative, drone surveillance and military targeting. So over 3,000 Google workers signed a letter opposing the contract, citing ethical concerns about weaponized AI. So the backlash actually worked, and it forced Google to let the contract expire and adopt AI ethics guidelines that are pledging not to engage in military surveillance projects. So you could say that's a success story. In the realm of hacktivism, we have seen that many are challenging the world of this digital hegemony and exposing corruption and surveillance and challenging authoritarian control. So hacktivists in 2016, also known as the hacking team, took down Hacking Team, excuse me. The hacktivists took down Hacking Team, an Italian spyware firm, by leaking emails and financial records that revealed its ties to oppressive governments and leading to a huge public outcry. And the company finally shut down. There are many contemporary examples, like recently in LA, some group was sort of opposing these Ring camera doorbells that have embedded cameras, and they're like smart doorbells that are recording everything, the video, whoever's ringing the bell, and it connects to your app and stuff like that. And so these people put anti-ring stickers to be gummed over the lenses of the devices. There was something that happened in the art world that was not famous to all, but 2023, there was a display of AI generated landscapes in a gallery in Vermont. And that was actually vandalized by some artists with the words AI is theft. So all of these creative professionals came together to point out that they're feeling exploited, and that a bunch of uncredited, unpaid for human work is being harvested from the internet and then repurposed to create generative AI. That's then sold back to us in the form of apps and other innovations. So that was also another example of protest and resistance. So there's so much to dig in as far as what are some examples where people are saying no in a very meaningful way, and enacting change. It's not just an opposition that, okay, yeah, let's complain and talk about it ad nauseum. It's something that has fruitful consequences. So in that regard, this paper that I want to highlight and give you a synopsis of outlines 3 different forms of digital Luddism, or 3 different strategies, and they are resistance, removal, and replacement. So I'll quickly read to you what those are and how they differ. Resistance is actually about actively blocking the expansion and normalization of certain technologies through dissent, activism, legal challenges. So an example of that would be just disrupting the narrative, right? And disrupting the narrative, the technological resistance is a problem that we have to overcome, and repositioning like resistance as a legitimate and necessary response to exploitive technological systems. So that would be the resistance. The removal is actually more about challenging digital monopolies, antitrust actions, for example, against Google, Amazon, Meta in the US and the EU, are struggling and fighting for reducing platform dominance and restoring competition. So like, yeah, diversifying the market essentially. There were some initiatives that worked in terms of like Microsoft and Amazon faced resistance, and they halted their facial recognition sales after the protests over bias and surveillance. So removal can be also one potential strategy. And then replacement is the third strategy, which I'm very much following that trend, like take back our tech, hashtag take back our tech, is one of the streams that I tap into to see what, instead of removing the technology, how can we re-render it and redesign it to serve our human interests? So there's a lot of work in that arena as well. So replacement is actually about developing sustainable alternatives that shift control away from monopolistic systems and embed justice, transparency, and user autonomy in the digital infrastructures. That's the definition. And there, for example, what are the examples? To social media, for example, we have Mastodon and Blue Sky, and they're shifting control to users more and removing the algorithmic manipulation. Firefox, which I'm on right now, I'm using Firefox, is open source alternative to Google Chrome, and that's integrating tracking protection and script blocking. So there are also initiatives to replace privacy invasive communication tools and phase in other apps. So essentially, as a summary of everything I've said, challenging digital hegemony is sort of at the core of the neo-Luddite movement that is growing. And that's happening through resistance, removal, and replacement. And it reframes resistance as a necessary act of ethical and political agency, not just a rejection, but a call to reimagine a future that's grounded in justice, autonomy, and collective well-being. And with that, I'm going to conclude today's episode because I want to make things digestible and easy to follow. And brevity, I think, is best because we have so much content in the world, too much content, more than we can process. And I'll just see you next time. So thanks for listening and tuning in, and look for the links in the description below. Thank you.